we get to participate in that. Like,
Yeah.
how cool is that? That's a gift to us.
Yeah.
It's a gift to us to be able to be in the room,
Yep.
to see when those conversions are happening. What an amazing gift as a missionary.
It's so
and
cool.
as just a disciple of Christ to participate.
Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome back to LDS Mission Stories. I'm so excited for today's episode. Definitely a conversation you'll want to stick around for. I'm joined in the studio by someone you may recognize. He's been in a lot of movies. He's a musician, very talented person. Joined by Casey and his son, Joseph.
It's good to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. So this is a conversation I've been looking forward to for quite some time now. You may recognize Casey. He's very talented actor and performer, done a lot of really great stuff. I've yet to learn much about you, Joseph, but I know that you're quite the young man coming home from a mission a week ago, right?
Yeah, just 7 days exactly.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, this should be a really exciting episode. We got a father and son to kind of talk about your mission stories. Some of the experiences you had while serving, but I'd also love to hear, about your relationship and the different aspects there. But maybe as we dive in, Casey, if you want to start, and then Joseph to follow, tell me why you decided to go on a mission as a young man, and what helped you make that decision, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I was born in Riverside, California. My parents are musicians. My dad is a film composer. My mom's a singer.
Oh, wow.
And my dad's a convert to the church. He and my mom met when they were 19. They were doing Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which I've done now many times in my life. So they met doing that, and my dad was definitely what I think we would consider like a golden, convert contact. Yeah. He instantly resonated with the gospel. I think falling in love with my mom helped, but it was interesting because like when he first started to learn about the gospel, he basically was just like, I want to kind of do this on my own.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm doing this because I believe it, not just because I love you. Mm-hmm. And he and my grandma, my mom's mom, really connected, and she's since passed on, but just an incredible woman, incredible testimony. And, he smoked, he drank, like he had some things that he had to like learn, like unlearn, and habits to break.
Right.
And he just cold turkey basically stopped doing those things.
Really?
And was baptized very quickly. The way he describes it is like, it sounded familiar. Like these truths just sounded familiar. They just resonated. They made sense. They connected so many things and questions that he had. And so he just was on fire, and he has been on fire. My mom's been on fire in the gospel since then. They just are incredible examples. And so I had the benefit of growing up with that. And so serving a mission was always something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was excited to do it. My older brother served a mission. He came back, and we had a couple of months together before I left on my mission. And that was an awesome time because, he was able to tell me his stories and experiences, and it got me that much more excited. And there were some things that happened right before my mission that actually made it kind of interesting, that could have potentially delayed my mission or whatever, but I'd always wanted to go on a mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And where did you serve?
I served in Argentina, Bahía Blanca.
Okay.
Which is just south of Buenos Aires, along the coast.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
And Joseph, kind of the same question. I'm sure your dad is a huge example of missionary service. But what were some of the factors that played into your decision to deciding to go on a mission?
Yeah, that's a great question. Similarly, I also had a great example, great parents.
That's debatable.
I think a mission was always something I wanted to do ever since growing up. Always had the like future missionary tag.
Yeah.
And I think when I got to high school is when I really started considering, do I actually want to serve a mission? What would this mean? And I think the reason I left on the mission was because of just the joy that I had felt growing up in the gospel. I felt very privileged to have that opportunity. And I just wanted to share that joy I had found with as many people as would listen. I do feel like, though, throughout my mission, that definitely changed. The reason why I left definitely wasn't the reason I stayed. I feel like it was because I wanted to share this joy, but also there was a little bit of,
obligation.
It's an expectation.
Yeah.
And it is a real expectation, and it's a good expectation.
Right.
But that definitely played a part in why I originally left on the mission, but why I stayed was just because the people, they're amazing, and seeing the light of Christ come into their life and change their life was just amazing, and it's so cool to see.
I love that. There's a common kind of principle that I have in these conversations that, there's three main motives to do something, and it's fear, responsibility, and love. Right. And I think that doing something like serving a mission, we may at some point fall in each of those categories, especially at the beginning. Maybe it's peer pressure. Those around you are going on missions, and you feel this fear from those around you, like, what are people going to think if I don't go on a mission? And that's what motivates you to do it. And, whether it's fear, responsibility, or love, I think that they're all motives to get you out there. And eventually you make that transition to this feeling of responsibility, and then to, you said the people, you could also translate that to love, right? And you're doing it because you love God, you love his children, and you want them to experience this joy that you've had in your life. I'm curious, Joseph, because you're as recent as it gets, and so you experienced maybe some of the adversities that young high school kids or kids considering going on missions are experiencing right now. What were some of the challenges that you faced in high school when it comes to your faith, or doing something as crazy as go and sacrifice 2 years in Germany, and serve the people there?
That's a great question. I think that all throughout high school, I really wanted to serve a mission, but I found that my faith was lacking. I felt like I'd been raised in the church. I knew a lot of gospel principles, but I never really absorbed them. I almost went in one ear, out the other.
Yeah.
And somehow never really stuck. I didn't really know that this church was true. And so in high school, I had some of these doubts of, well, is this really true? Do I really believe this? And I think it was a combination of friends also. I had some really good friends and some not so great friends. And I think just seeing the contrast between them really helped me to solidify that this is what I wanted to do. Just the directions they were going, and I felt like this was something that would benefit and help my life. And then as I started preparing more for a mission, I just felt amazing confirmations from the Spirit that this is what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that
I
did go on a mission.
I love that. And tell me where you served, I guess.
I served in Frankfurt, Germany.
Okay. And what was it like reading Frankfurt, Germany when you got your mission call? Tell me about that experience.
It was very surreal. I had imagined myself going somewhere either in the States or somewhere very like dirt floors, sleeping out under the stars basically. Because I just love roughing it.
Yeah.
And when I got called to Germany, I was like, oh, that's very different than
I
had imagined. It's first world country, a very different culture. But I was excited. I didn't know very much about Germany, but I knew that it was a cool place, and I was excited to go.
I love that. That's awesome. And kind of changing the conversation, switching to you, Casey. He Joseph talks about his experience in high school, what were some of the things that you and or your wife did in your home to obviously not force or make Joseph go on a mission, but to invite the Spirit to help him figure out this life-changing decision for himself? What are some things you guys did to implement that?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things we've always tried to do is to have frequent and open conversations about the gospel and about gospel principles, around the dinner table, at prayer time, like just different opportunities to express things.
Yeah.
And I think that's the power of the family and that environment is like you have these moments where you can express your testimony. It doesn't have to be like, I'd like to bear my testimony. It's like,
doesn't need to be
like, hey,
formal.
I was learning about this thing and studying this principle, or I read this scripture and I had this thought, and it's just these teaching moments, and as a father, I have seen so many times again and again that the Spirit like guides you as a parent to say what is needed. Like so many times I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to articulate this, but because you're in that setting and you're expressing that testimony and those thoughts and those feelings, you really are inspired. Like you have, as a parent, you have special keys that you're given to teach your children.
Yeah.
Like of all the keys that you're given in callings in the church or different things, like those of a parent are the most important. And so if you trust that, and if you trust that you have those keys, you will be inspired to know what to say and how to say it to your kids. There's no more important pupil class, audience than that of your children.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, been one of the things that I'm most grateful for in terms of blessings. It's feeling that support from the Lord to be able to teach our kids what we believe in and true principles.
Yeah. I love that. And it's interesting how much overlap there is in some of these blessings that you're promised on your mission. And I think, what you just spoke to is a skill that you learn on your mission of how the Spirit speaks to you and how the Spirit can speak through you. You both learned languages, and so you experienced the gift of tongues on some degree. And, the scriptures and Preach My Gospel always are talking about how, we won't even know what to say, but the Spirit speaks through us. And you reflect on lessons or interactions you had on your mission. You're like, I don't even know what I said, but the Spirit was there, and so-and-so felt the Spirit and, received my invitation and is coming to church or whatever it might be. And it's crazy how that relationship with the Spirit in a lot of cases is born on the mission, and it's grown on the mission and then is utilized in so many different ways later in your life. I got home from my mission 5 years ago, and I've seen that in ways, and what you just spoke to about being a parent, when your kids come to you with a tough question or certain situations where you're like, I don't even know what to tell them, when the Spirit's with you, you say the exact thing they need to hear. And so kind of on that thread, what are some ways, or what are some experience you had, maybe starting with you, Casey, and we'll go to you, Joseph, getting on your mission and starting that relationship with the Spirit and maybe your Savior? What are some pivotal experiences that you had that have maybe formulated your testimony?
Yeah. I mean, when I think about like preparing to go on a mission, there were two really important and hard lessons that I had to learn. One was before my mission, I got accepted to an acting school in Hollywood and went down there for a little while. And this was like a dream come true.
Yeah.
I was like a theater kid in high school, like so in. I was like all in. I loved it. And again, I always want to go on a mission, but I had this opportunity to go to this acting school before, and I was like, great, I'm going to take it.
Wow.
I'll go there for a while, and then I'll go on a mission.
Yeah.
And as I started going, I was excited, but I was very, very quickly, something was off. I was just uncomfortable. I I mean, it was a culture shock going from, Bountiful, Utah to
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
So like I got that. I got that it was a different environment, but there was something more than even that it was just like something was not right. And it got to the point where I was staying with my grandparents who were serving in the mission presidency of Riverside, California at the time. And I was like around them and in their home and felt the Spirit. And then I'd go to the school and I would not feel so much the Spirit. and I ended up like fasting and praying, basically just saying like, what's going on? What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Because I kept feeling like I should leave the school, and that just made no logical sense to me.
Yeah.
And anyways, long story short, I ended up doing that, had an amazing experience where really for the first time in my life, like I felt like God spoke to me.
Wow.
And felt that confirmation from the Spirit and what that felt like, and ended up leaving the school. But I thought like, why did you give me that opportunity, which I felt like from the beginning was a blessing from heaven, just to take it away?
Yeah.
And I learned years later, really, that it was because at that time in my life, if I was going to pursue this industry that is not the best industry when it comes to gospel principles.
Yeah.
If I was going to do that, I had to learn at the very beginning to choose Him, no matter what. Yeah. And that was like such an important lesson for me to learn, especially as I look at my life and my career and all the things. Like I had to learn that at that point. It was absolutely critical, as painful as it was. But when I then got out of my mission, I was like the kind of missionary that was like, like I was gung ho, like
all in.
I love people and I love talking to people and I have a lot of energy, and so I was like, I'm gonna go and we're gonna baptize everybody.
Yeah.
And almost like white knuckle it. Like I've always prided myself of being like a really hard worker.
Yeah.
I worked on a farm growing up. Like I work hard at everything I do. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into it. And usually that results in good results.
Yeah.
But on a mission, it's not about that.
Yeah.
It's not about just white knuckling it. And it's not necessarily just about the hard work.
Yeah.
It's about letting go.
Yeah.
And surrendering to His will.
Yeah.
And what that looks like is a lot of humility. It looks like a lot of patience, which I'm not very good at. And so 6 or 7 months into my mission, I kind of had a crash and burn, type moment where after white knuckling everything and I'll just like sweat it out kind of mentality, I had to come to grips with that. It got to the point where I was just like, maybe I should just go home. And at that time, we called twice a year, and I called my mission president, explained what was happening, what was going on, how I was feeling. And he's like, why don't we call your parents? Let's talk to your parents. And so I remember just from our little apartment talking to my parents and whenever it was. And after that conversation, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna let it go. I'm gonna trust in the Lord. And it was really the turning point of my mission. And I think you actually had kind of a similar experience and realization of like, it's His work.
Yeah.
And we have to trust Him, and we just have to be there and be a willing vessel to convey His love and the Spirit and to say what He would say. It's not about us. It's not about, our goals necessarily, what we want. It's just Thy will be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you make that, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You make that transition. I almost every single missionary, and I'd love to hear this story from you in a sec, where you get out on the mission. It's overwhelming. It's uncomfortable. It's scary. And eventually, after a couple months, you start to realize, okay, like I'm getting into the flow of things. I'm seeing the reasons as to why things are maybe so strict, why guidelines are the way that they are. And you kind of lock in and you realize like, man, I can really work hard. And you gain a lot of confidence in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, man, I really can be a really good missionary. And you, at least this is my experience. I guess I'm speaking to myself, and maybe similar to yours, where you almost build this sense of pride where you're like, man, I can just go, I can go talk to whoever, I can testify, I can do all these things.
I'm good at this.
Yeah, exactly. And you gain so much confidence, and eventually you burn out, and you realize that you're nothing without the Lord. You're nothing, right? And this is, like you said, this is His work, and it's our privilege, and it's our our blessing to even be a part of it, right? Like, we think that it's all us and our own efforts. Dude, this is just us getting a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
It's such a major blessing. And really quick, I wanted to ask you on the subject of, because that's such a cool experience that you had going to that acting school. A lot of kids face that nowadays, where they have this, good, better, best kind of situation where you have two good options. Right. And whether it's in acting or in athletics and education, what would you say to kids who might be saying, I'm giving up these 2 years. I'm going to fall behind all my peers if I go for these 2 years. What would you say to them?
I was totally there, and I totally get it. And you go through this phase of like justification, left and right, of like, if I stay, then I could be like an ambassador. Like, what if I get cast in a big movie? Like, and people would know that I could be like Donny Osmond,
Yeah.
You go through all these things of like, I could do more here than I could on a mission, and all these things, or sports like look at Steve Young.
Yeah.
And the reality is, this is so important, that the outcome and your life will always be better when it's the Lord's way. Like, we create these scenarios and these visions for ourselves and our lives that we think are ideal, and yet the Lord's way is always going to be better, and it usually isn't the way that we think it's going to be. Which again is that letting go, that trust, which is hard for me to do. I like to control things. I like to control the variables. But yeah, just trusting that the Lord's way is always going to be better than your way.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and it's funny how the Lord really does He blesses you in ways that aren't just spiritual after the mission. And I had this thought last night because I was watching the basketball game with the Cavs, and they have Sam Merrill on their team. He's a basketball player who's a member of the church, and he served a mission. And here he is competing at the highest level, basketball there is. And he's talked about his missionary service and how it's blessed him. And there's guys like Britton Covey and you, and there's so many people out there who would say, it was never a falling behind type of experience. If anything, it accelerated your progression, even in ways that aren't just spiritual. And the Lord blesses you in ways that He knows are important to you, even if they don't have that big of an eternal significance. He knows that it's important to you. It's important to your mortal life, and He wants you to be happy and fulfilled in that way. Kind of pivoting, Joseph, I'd love to give you some time. Talk about maybe some experiences early on in your mission that you went through. The way I like to frame this question is, imagine you're sitting down with all your posterity and your grandkids, and one of them says, "Grandpa Joseph, what was your mission like?" What are some stories that you might tell them?
Yeah. I would say at the beginning of my mission, like Casey here, Dad, I was always a pretty social person. I like to talk to people. I did door-to-door sales leading up to my mission for about 1.5 years. And,
nice.
I really enjoyed that type of conversations. Just going up to people, talking to them, was something I enjoyed. And so I thought that was gonna boost me ahead on my mission. I was like, oh, perfect. Like that's like what people hate the most from what I've heard. So I was like, perfect, this is gonna be great. And I got to the field, and first of all, it was German. So
Yeah.
there goes all of my talking to anybody.
Yeah.
Other than like one memorized sentence that took me like 4 days to nail down.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was really hard. But one thing that I noticed is I was just relying on myself for probably the first few months. And even once my German started getting to where I could have simple conversations and talk to people about the gospel, I was just relying on myself. And I was preaching about God every day. I knew he existed. I loved God, but I wasn't fully trusting him. I wasn't giving him my trust, my everything. And I had an experience where I was just done. I was tired. I was worn out. It was after a long day, and I was just looking for light. It was a lot. And I remember just praying in the bathroom, actually.
Nice.
Was the bathroom where I could just be alone for a second. And
it's a sacred place on a mission.
That's true.
Away from your companion.
I was just praying for guidance, for light, for assistance. And I remember as I was praying and telling God that I was willing to trust him, to give him my everything. That the next day we went out, did the same thing, same amount of no's, same amount of hardship, but it was an amazing day. And I remember just feeling that no matter how good or bad any day was, as long as I was trusting in God, it was always going to be a better day. And it was always going to be a good day.
I love that.
And that was something really powerful early on in my mission. And I was very lucky that was early on.
Yeah.
That helped shape the rest of my mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'd love to hear, maybe a specific story of someone you taught or you met in Germany where that lesson you learned of giving God your trust and your efforts that maybe blessed you in your missionary work. Maybe share a story or two with me.
I can do that. The first one that comes to mind, his name. Actually, I probably shouldn't say his name for safety reasons, but he was from Damascus, Syria.
Okay.
And there are a lot of immigrants in Germany. It's very much a melting pot now, which is super cool. I thought it'd be old dudes in lederhosen with a beer stein. And, not the case. But yeah, he was in Damascus, Syria. He was studying economics. And he befriended some people that were Christian. And these were just other students there. And word, I guess, had gotten out that he had befriended some of these people that were Christian. And he was kidnapped from his apartment at night. And they went and they took him and they incarcerated him, this group of opposing religion. And they incarcerated him for 12 months. And throughout this 12 months, he was beaten, he was starved, all manner of cool things. And it was very hard on him. But something that ended up being a blessing was these other inmates that were with him were also either people that had been suspected for being Christian or they were Christian. And during this 12 months of incarceration is actually when he began to learn the basics of Christian teachings. And when he started to build his foundation of his faith in Jesus Christ. And it was just right after his friends and family were able to pay this ransom that he was being held for, that he fled to Germany. And he was praying really hard for guidance and for light from Jesus Christ, and he wanted to come closer to Jesus Christ. And I think it was like not even 2 weeks while being in Germany, he ran into some missionaries just on a train, and he didn't speak any German, any English, just Arabic.
Wow.
And he was then referred to our area, and we got to teach him. And he is honestly one of the biggest examples of trusting in the Lord. His conversion and his faith in Jesus Christ, and as we taught him, he has such a powerful testimony of Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon. And as soon as we shared it with him, he was so anxious to share it with all of his friends and family, and just share the light that comes through it. And I think that also helped motivate me to share the light. But he is truly one of the most amazing people I've ever met. I'm lucky to call him a friend, but just after 3 weeks of teaching him, we got special permission from our mission president, because normally there's an exception process for people from dangerous lands such as Syria.
Yeah.
That he could be baptized just after 3 weeks. And so we were able to baptize him, and a week later we went to the temple and he baptized us, and it was such a cool experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that he is probably the example for me, at least, of trusting in the Lord with everything you have.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so crazy how much we learn from people that we teach. You know, you think you go out as the teachers and the know-it-alls, and you realize that you're the one who
being taught,
who learns, you know, from people's examples. And what I love about his story is it lives on. And that's the nature of the gospel, is we believe in something that is bigger than this life, right? And, you know, if you were to make a movie about this guy, the climax of the story would probably be his adversity that he faced while in incarceration and finding Christ. And the ending of the movie would maybe be him fleeing to Germany. But that's where it began. That's where he was safe, but maybe he reached out to God and was like, okay, I'm in a better position, but now what do I do? Mm-hmm. You know, and I think we experience similar things in our life where we think we've made it. And I remember feeling this after I came home from my mission, and maybe this is some of the feelings that you're feeling being a week home, is it's like you live your whole life up to your mission, and then you come home and you're like, okay, well, now what?
Yeah.
You know, and a mission is, sometimes I tell a lot of kids, once you figure it out, it can be pretty easy. Mm-hmm. You just get in the flow, you're exactly where you need to be.
Yeah.
You're doing the Lord's will. There's no doubt in your mind how you're spending your time, but then you come home and you got to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
Right. You got to figure out your purpose, what you're working for, and not to stress you out or anything, Joseph, because it's a beautiful thing and it's awesome. But I guess the reason I'm saying this is so much of the lessons you learn on your mission and the person you become so resourceful in your life afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Casey, I'd love to hear a story or two from your mission.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories from my mission has to do with music. And I'm grateful that this happened, because having done a lot of music like before my mission, I wanted to be able to use that as a tool, to open doors. And in this case, like, it literally did open doors. So I was serving in this little town. It's called Madariaga, Argentina. It's no longer part of the mission just because of some of the reshaping and stuff of the mission. But it's this little, like, kind of, it's a gaucho town, like this Argentine cowboy town. So it's just like tiny little town, kind of famous, for being like this gaucho town. In fact, one of their residents rode his horse from Madariaga to New York City and back. That's like one of their like claims to fame.
Wow.
Like, he was in the New York Times front cover.
Oh my goodness.
But in that town, we had somewhat of a hard time opening doors or getting people to listen to us. And so oftentimes we would say, after they said no, we would say, oh, okay, no problem. Do you mind if we just sing you a quick verse of a hymn? And luckily I was with companions that could at least carry a tune and were willing to sing with me. And so we would sing them just a simple hymn, and a lot of times that would extend the conversation. Like, okay, that's pretty good. So how long are you guys here? And it would like extend it. But one of the doors we knocked on and did that for was the guy in the town who ran the local radio station. DJ. And so, yeah, the DJ basically of the town.
No way.
And so after we sang him a hymn, he was like, "Hey, you guys are pretty good. You want to come on to my show?" So we're like, "Yeah, sure."
Absolutely.
So he had us on, and we sang some stuff, and he kind of interviewed us on the air.
No way.
And then after that, like we would knock on doors and people would be like, "Oh, I heard you guys on the radio." And as the people would be like, "You guys sound really good." We're like, "Thanks. Can we sing you something?"
Yeah.
And so it started to like really open up doors for us. And we ended up going on to his show like multiple times. And so we became like known in this little town for being like the singing missionaries.
Yeah.
And it was funny because like at some point I got a phone call from my mission president. And he's like, "Hey, I heard you guys have been going on the radio, and that's great." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's been so cool. We're opening doors and people know who we are." He's like, "Okay, so just keep in mind that we're supposed to get permission, when we go on to the air, and it's kind of a PR thing." It was so funny because it was like on the one hand, he was like, "This is so cool." On the other hand, like the rules are, but it was neat to see how music can really kind of bypass the barriers that people put up.
Yeah. And
you're able to say things and teach things through music that is hard to do just through word alone. Yeah. And I've continued to see that well after my mission, that the power that music has to teach people in a way that just reaches them and doesn't feel preachy, doesn't feel like they need to put up any walls.
Right.
Christmas is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Where all these songs are about Jesus.
Oh yeah.
And the doctrine that we're teaching through this music is really quite deep. Mm-hmm. And to a lot of people, it's just a nice tune, a nice song, but they're still being taught.
Absolutely. Well, it's universal, the language, and like you said, Joseph, how, when we're speaking in German and you're stripped of this ability to be social and to communicate, music is kind of a way to bridge that from time to time, where you can kind of wash away maybe any cultural or any differences that you might have and unify in Christ, and that's what I love. It's always interesting to, there's some contrast between the time that you served a mission and the time that you served a mission, Joseph, like how missionary work has evolved. And one of the biggest things is the introduction of Preach My Gospel, right? And how missionary work went from, this memorized discussions that you recite to people to, here are some principles, go be yourself and teach it in the way that the Spirit guides you to do it. Right. And prophets and apostles have advised us through Preach My Gospel and in other occasions to, use our talents, use our skills to help share the light of Christ. Right. And, music is something that is important to you, and you've spent so much of your life, developing that skill. What a blessing to be able to go and implement that into your missionary work. Totally. And I've talked to my little brother. He's on a mission in Chicago right now. Okay. And it's funny. So I have 5 brothers and one sister, or 4 brothers and 1 sister. And we're all about 5'8", 5'9", short guys, and then here's my little brother, right? His whole life, he was always shorter and smaller, but he loved basketball, right? He was out playing basketball all day, every day, working so hard, and he was so good at shooting, dribbling. But eventually his height got the best of him, and kids were outgrowing him, and he wasn't able to make his high school team after working so hard, and wasn't able to get on those teams that he was really wanting to. But the funniest thing has happened, because after, his senior year and then graduating, he has just grown so much, and he's like almost 6'2".
Wow.
And he's like a head taller than all of our brothers. And here he is in Chicago having these weekly basketball nights, gathering all sorts of awesome people to come into the chapel, and he has taught and helped people join the church through these basketball efforts and this random talent that he thought was a waste, in high school. He's like, oh, all my life I've just been working towards this for nothing. Then on the mission, he's just like, it's one of his efforts to find people to teach. And I'm just like, dude, it's so divine. God is so involved in every aspect of our life, whether we're willing to admit it or not. Amazing. And it's so cool that music has been that for you.
Totally.
Joseph, was there any aspects, kind of on that same thread, maybe what are some ways, and maybe talking about Preach My Gospel too, what are some ways that you found Preach My Gospel helpful as a missionary, and also, what are some ways that you tried to be yourself when teaching as a missionary?
Yeah. Preach My Gospel has made my mission. I specifically love page 13, right? Successful missionary.
Okay.
I love the fact that our success isn't determined by results.
Yeah.
But it's determined by our desire, right? To find, teach, baptize. We find to teach, we teach, to baptize, we baptize, to create lifelong disciples of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And I love this principle of what a successful missionary really is. Right. I feel like a lot of times, especially going to Germany, where it's, we don't baptize as much as, say some more South American missions, or some other missions, but there is so much power in the desire, right? And God could do our work, or his work, with or without us. Like you were saying earlier, it's a privilege that we have to be a part of his work and to be able to play a part at all. But the fact that we can do this, and we can help people, and we can grow ourselves, is so amazing. And it's truly just our effort, right? What are we willing to give God? And that's when we will receive the most blessings and really recognize his hand in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. That's spot on. I love that. And that's I think that's something that a lot of missionaries struggle with. And I'm so grateful for this successful missionary definition that Preach My Gospel gives us, because it not only outlines, what are the real metrics you should be measuring your success, which is your desire and your commitment, right? But it helps us identify our divine identity, that we're all children of God, right? And whether you're in Germany or in Argentina, you and everyone there has a divine relationship with our Heavenly Father. And we have this message that will help them understand that relationship a little bit more, right? And what an important responsibility. And I laugh at it every day that, God is trusting all these young kids to go do this, and it goes back to what you said. It's a privilege, right? He doesn't need us for this work. He could do it all himself.
Yeah.
But he wants us to partake in it because he knows it'll bless us.
How do we know the church is true? Because, missionaries are the ones out there doing it. Like, it has to be.
100%. No, it's so true, man. I love to hear, kind of as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you guys at the end for some advice for people going on your missions, but I'd love to hear maybe one more story from each of you, whether it's an impactful story, a funny story, a scary story. If you need to think about it for a sec, we can think, but yeah, if something comes to mind.
I go first.
You got it.
There was a guy that we taught. So he started dating one of the members in the branch where we were serving, and he was just super cool guy, super handsome, kind of seemed too good to be true. I remember thinking to myself with the sister, I was like, be careful with this guy.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we understand what his intentions are, because this sister was like a dear friend of ours, and really loved her. And then she started dating this guy that was just like, super guapo and like whatever. And, but he was cool.
Yeah.
Like he was like kind of a humble guy, more humble than you'd think,
Yeah.
And so I remember we went and met him one day. And then the next day, the sister calls us. It's like, elders, you got to come over here, like ASAP. And so we go over there. We're like, oh, great. What happened? And they're both there. And she looks over at him and she's like, go ahead, tell him. I'm like, what is happening? What is he going to say? And he basically proceeded to tell us he had this dream that night. And the dream that he described, he was like, I was in like this really bright room, and there was like, it was very beautiful. And there were these like chandeliers, and everyone was dressed in white, and Maria was there, and I was there, and we were both in white, and I had this thing around my waist, and basically proceeded to describe like the temple.
Yeah.
And, some of the clothing and things like that. And,
Wow.
and even some of the different, things and ordinances within the temple. Had this dream. Like we hadn't even barely had the first discussion. And so our, of course we're just like floored.
Even go from there.
Yeah. We're like, okay, well, let's start at the beginning. God is our loving Heavenly Father.
Seriously.
But I mean, he ended up, just being absolutely like called and prepared. Like he was like the most golden, friend that we met on my whole mission. Wow. And very clearly was called, and he has remained faithful. And his wife, their son is actually on a mission now.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
beautiful.
Your age but that I love that story because it just goes to show you that the Lord is aware of his children, and he calls them, he plucks them out of the world when needed. And, hopefully they're open and humble when that happens. But again, the Lord knows his sheep,
right?
And he will call them out when they're ready.
Yeah. Well, and the parallel between your story and the one you shared earlier, Joseph, is, you were able to witness a part of it, right? And there were parts of the story that happened before and that happened after and are happening after, right? And the Lord really does prepare, like with your friend's situation, his being able to establish that relationship with Christ and his ability to pray before the missionaries came. So he had somewhat of something to nourish and to build off of. And then, revelations through dreams. It's like God is just preparing all of us.
And like you said, we get to participate in that. Like how cool is that? That's a gift to us.
Yeah.
It's a gift to us to be able to be in the room.
Yep.
To see when those conversions are happening. What an amazing gift as a missionary.
It's so
and
cool.
As just a disciple of Christ to participate.
Yeah. No, exactly. Joseph, if you have another story, I'd love to hear one.
This one actually happened pretty recently, about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
But we had this friend named David. David's awesome. And we originally got him as a Facebook referral. And so he showed up, and in our PMG, we reached out to him, no response and nothing. And then our mission president that week had given us all like a commission, you could say. He had said that every companionship in the whole mission should fast to find somebody to bring closer to Jesus Christ through the covenant of baptism. And so we did. We were fasting, and we had no potential friends. Basically our teaching pool had been depleted. We had just kind of wiped it, and we were looking for friends to start teaching. So lots of finding every day.
Yeah.
And we were fasting, and on that same Sunday, there was this guy, and this little kid that showed up to the ward. Never seen them before, and so we went up and we introduced ourselves. And the girl, she was a recent convert from Mexico. She'd just been baptized about 6 months earlier. and her husband was David, this referral we had gotten that we'd never been in contact with. And yeah, she came up to us and she was like, elders, I want you to baptize David, my fiance. And we were like, okay, yeah, we can probably like figure that out. And so we started teaching David, and immediately David fell in love with the gospel. Yeah. It was so cool to see it start to change his life, and just how happy and excited he got about it whenever we started to talk about things. And he became very passionate, asked a lot of questions. And when we were going to baptize him, it was the last Sunday of my mission. We were going to baptize him on that Sunday, but what ended up happening was Friday night he calls us, and he was in the ER, and we had everything planned for Sunday. And he called us and he said, elders, like, I got an infection on my leg. He sent us pictures. It was like purple and red. And he was like, I'm in the ER right now. I don't think I can be baptized on Sunday. And we were like, okay, like that's okay. We totally understand. Hope you feel better. And we like prayed with him, and we called him the next day to just pray with him, see how he was doing. And he said the prayer, and he prayed. I remember he said, well, I think it was in German, but he said essentially, please help me to be able to be baptized as soon as possible. And we were like, yeah, like that'll be good, like next week or, in 2 weeks, whenever he's feeling better. And then Sunday morning he calls us up and he's like, elders, I feel great today. And we're like, good to hear. And he's like, I'm coming to church. And we're like, that's awesome. And he's like, I want to be baptized today. We're like, well, like we kind of already moved everything to next week.
No stress.
Like the ward might freak out if it's last minute. And he's like, meet me at the church right now. And it was like an hour and a half before church started. And we were like, okay, we'll head over. And so we went over to the church and started just talking with him. And he went up to some of the members that were already there and was like, hey, good to see you again. Yeah, I'm David. I'm getting baptized today. And we're like, oh, yeah. And he just kept doing it. And eventually he reintroduced himself to one of the members of the bishopric. And was like, hi, good to see you again. Yeah, I'm Dave. Yeah, I'm getting baptized today. And he, this member of the bishopric turned to us and he was like, elders, is that true? And we were like, yeah, well, probably next week just because of the plan. And he was like, oh yeah, we can make it work. And we're like, okay. And so we have this like kind of culture, I guess you could say, in our mission where whenever possible, we try to get members to baptize. Yeah. Just to help build more connections in the ward. And so my entire mission, I had never been the one baptizing in the font. Mm-hmm. And what was crazy is that last Sunday of my entire mission, my white clothes were our apartment was like 5 minutes away from the church building. And so the member took us there. We got my baptismal clothes, and I was able to baptize him that day. But everything just fell into place. It was perfect. It could not have been better with a week of planning, a month of planning. It was perfect. Yeah. And it was exactly what he needed. And honestly, it was part of what I really needed. I had been I had been struggling, or not struggling, but just kind of like reviewing my mission, right? Did I do enough? Did I complete everything I was sent here to do? And I think that ended up working out perfectly. And I really felt that like I was seen by God. Yeah. And that I had been lucky to been a part of God's work. And
what a neat, like, tender mercy.
It was a tender mercy.
A message from God, like, it's okay. Good job. Well done.
Seriously.
That was cool.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's what a beautiful way to end the mission experience, and hopefully you've drawn from that experience already, just being home, and 100%. We can continue to look for those opportunities. I'd love to end with both of you sharing a few pieces of advice for, maybe a young man or a young woman just got their call to Argentina or Germany. What do you wish you would have known before going, obviously the mission, we've kind of talked about that, but specifically to those countries, it can be something practical, or just some advice with the people or the culture, the language. What would you tell them?
When I got to Argentina, like I kind of like Joseph with the Lederhosens and Biersteins. I just thought like South America, there's gonna be like chickens on the bus and dirt roads and stuff like
Yeah.
It's not like that at all in Argentina, at least. It's very European actually.
Huh.
And a lot of people of like European descent. And so that was surprising to me when I got there. But also, don't freak out if you're going to a different country and you've spent 6 weeks or so going through the MTC learning the language. And when you get there, you feel like you learn the wrong language. That's totally normal. Because when I got to Argentina, I was like, I learned the wrong language. I went through the wrong language in the MTC. Like, I don't understand a single word people are saying. How is this possible? But just trust that the gift of tongues will come. Like that's a real thing. You just trust it, keep working hard, and you'll be okay.
I love that. So good. Yeah. What would you say about Germany?
I would say just really, really trusting in God. And I guess that's pretty general for every missionary. But that is honestly what made the biggest difference in my mission. And I love the story of Enoch and Moses. When he talks, he's called by God to do this, to be a prophet, to call these people to repentance. And he's like, I can't, like, everybody hates me. That's like, it's one of my favorite scriptures, but I love that. Just, I think it's the next chapter over. It talks about how powerful he was, because he's slow of speech, right? And just the next chapter over, it talks about how fearless his word is, right? It talks about how his word moved mountains. And I think that's so important that we remember, when we rely on God, we can do anything, right? Yeah. We can do all things through Jesus Christ and his power. And that's honestly the biggest thing that I learned on my mission. And, the thing I'm hoping to bring forward, and the biggest advice I would give to people, is really just trust God, rely on his strength, and you will be strengthened.
Yeah. Love that. It's so well said. Both of you. That is some great advice that I think is applicable to, like you said, most missionaries, and hopefully those watching and listening can take note.
Can I share one more thing?
Absolutely.
One more word of advice. Missions are obviously hard, and they're hard in mostly good ways. But I think sometimes we focus a little too much on that. And what I would say, like, if I could go back myself and like prepare better for a mission, I'd focus more on learning how to truly love God and to truly love people the way that God loves them. I think that's the superpower of really effective missionaries, is channeling the love of God through yourself to the people that you interact with. Because the love for the people is the thing that moves the mountains, the thing that opens hearts, the things that allow you to see past the layers of mortality and baggage of mortality that people carry.
Yeah.
And to see that, just to see their true identity as children of God.
Yeah.
That's the superpower of missionary work. And so as you prepare to go on your mission, learn to really love people, learn to really see them. And the way you do that is you really get to know God, and you know how he feels about you, and you feel the love that he has for you. And then you're able to then channel that through to other people.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. I'm glad you added that on, because it's a lesson that needs to be learned, especially if you have the opportunity to learn that on your mission. Yeah. That will set you up for success later in life, because whether it's in a work environment or in education or hobbies, you're gonna need to You're going to need to love people.
Totally.
And it's going to be difficult.
And by the way, it starts with your companion.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, which is hard to do sometimes. You know, we don't choose our companions, but gosh, like what an amazing opportunity to learn how to love people who are different, who may be challenging in different ways, that you have to live with 24/7. Like what an amazing way to prepare you for the workforce, to prepare you for marriage that sometimes can get hard.
Absolutely.
It's learning to love people even when you don't want to, even when it's hard. Love your enemies, bless them that curse you. Like these are principles that the Savior taught.
Yeah.
That if you can learn on your mission, will make life so much better and will allow you to connect with people in all sorts of amazing ways.
Yeah. Casey and Joseph, thank you again for coming on. This has been so cool.
Thank you for having us.
You guys are awesome.
Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.